Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video we are finally going to be going over a Ruby Amethyst update adapting the new Maui Shark into the deck. Not this Maui, the other Maui. We're going to see if this card really has a place in this deck. We'll talk about some of the things that we can potentially go for and how good it will actually be. One thing I will note, and one thing that's very interesting in my opinion, is I think Peter Pan Shadowfinder could make its way back into the meta into Ruby Amethyst if you're running Maui Half Shark or if you're making a build around it, because this card has the nice little ability that says your other characters with evasive gain rush. Traditionally, not a very good ability. The only reason this card was played was because it was a check 2 Diablo into the Emerald matchups for Ruby Amethyst, but then this card quickly got phased out. But Maui Half Shark is really the first like strength oriented evasive character that we have, more or less. I mean, I know there's a couple that are not really meta relevant, like there's a Radigan in Emerald that's a 4-1 evasive that quests for 2, but nobody really plays that. But this is the first real like meta competitive evasive strength based character in my opinion. A character that has evasive, that has a primary focus on its strength, being 7 strength, which is huge. But more interestingly, when you drop this card, you have to wait a turn because it doesn't have rush. But if you have the Shadow Finder on the board, it will give this card rush, and then you can challenge with it right away. So it's basically a better version of the original Maui Hero to All if you see it with the Shadow Finder. And of course, the nice thing is you can play this Shadow Finder at any points from turns 3 to 5, and then drop Maui Shark on 6 and instantly have it have rush to get value off of it right away. So there's a nice little combo there and some synergy. We're also playing Elsa, the 5th Spirit, so if you already have the Maui Shark on board, let's say, and you do have to wait a turn before you use it, you can use the Elsa 5th Spirit on the following turn in order to exert a threat, because maybe your opponent's like, oh, he dropped the Maui Shark, I don't have a direct answer to it right now, I'm not going to exert my characters, I'll just wait. But then you can 5th Spirit, force tap something down. This card has evasive, the Maui Shark has evasive, so whatever you tap down, as long as it doesn't have a ward, because that means you can't target it, but it means that the Maui Shark should be able to take it out right away, and then you get some value out of it. But we talked about some of the combos there, but let's go over the actual deck list here. So Chernobog Followers, staple in Amethyst. This is the best one drop that you could play. I'm testing out the Cogsworth, but from what I've played so far, and this is just I've only played simulations with this deck. I have not actually tested this against real players yet, but this card just seems very underwhelming. It just seems too hard to set up, so I would probably cut this either for Magic Brooms again, but because we're not playing the library, I think Magic Broom may not be great. I originally was putting in the new Moana, the 3/2 1-drop, which I think is extremely strong, and I might go back to that in place of this Cogsworth. Because again, in theory, this Cogsworth, you need 7 ink, you drop Maui Shark, you drop Cogsworth, you give the Maui Shark a rush right away, then you can challenge with it right away. But that's just too much setup. Your opponent needs an exerted character, it might be too telegraphed, you're waiting for turn 7. But turn 7 is also be prepared. I just think that overall this card doesn't do enough in the deck to just warrant playing it, because you play this, you don't really care about giving any of these other things rush, so you're only really playing it for one card, and it doesn't really like translate into like a meta competitive state. So I'd probably cut this for the new Moana. I'm back on the Cusco, and this card feels really good, especially because we're on more copies of Crab. In any Amethyst deck I've been playing lately, I've opted for at least 3 Crab. I've tried 2, and I'm like, no, I always want more Crab. I think this card is definitely coming back in a big way. I don't think you play 4, but I think 3 is a really good soft spot for it. And using it with Cusco is incredible. So, you could also make the case instead of Cogsworth to run the new Diablo, the 0/1, because you can give that +3 and then positively trade up and then draw off that Diablo, because that's the same interaction you get with Cusco. This becomes a 4/2 basically, and then you trade up and then you draw a card. But yeah, very, very strong synergy there. And, Cusco just coming down on the board. I think being an X and 2 body though is better than being the O and 1 body, because Diablo gets outed by absolutely everything, and then you just basically get a draw. So it's kind of like a tempo lost in a deck like this. But I do think the Cusco is definitely a little bit better, because for example, like T-Pose can't trade into the Cusco, whereas T-Po can trade into the Diablo, and that's going to be a significant interaction moving forward, because Sapphire Steel, which we'll take a look at for a simulation, and Ruby Sapphire are going to be very prevalent in the meta. Next up, we've got Madam M Snake. I thought about not using this, but in testing, again, it just seemed like this card was just stronger. I was thinking about using Lumiere to give everything +1, and the reason for that is because it will allow Peter Pan Shadow to dodge Brawl if you have Lumiere and Peter Pan Shadow, but then we run into that situation again where it's like you need these certain cards to be set up in a certain way, and if you see one without the other, it's just like it doesn't really work. And then you see the other combo piece later on, then it's useless. So I'm like, no, you just need to build the deck so it's just efficient with each card that you're playing. The Peter Pan Shadow in and of itself is a decent card. Like, it can actually give your genie evasive, which we'll talk about in a bit, but that rarely will ever matter. But you never know. Like, having these two evasive threats on the board might be enough to get over a critical evasive threat on the board. Like, if an opponent has a Diablo at a Cove, the Peter Pan Shadow isn't enough, but I mean, with a Lumiere it would be. But then if you have the Genie as follow-up, at least you can like combo both of those into it, and both of these cards are still standalone okay by themselves, especially the Genie, obviously. But that's the reason why I opted not for Lumiere, because I don't really need to give +1 strength to anything else. Like, giving +1 to Kuzco would be nice, but then it's just a 2/2. I'd rather make it with the or boost it up with the Crab anyways. So hopefully I'm making sense here, guys. Like, you know, talking through some of these lines and like what makes sense and what doesn't. Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. Next up, we've got Madam M Fox. No need to explain this. Best Amethyst card still in the game, in my opinion. Merlin Crab, I already explained why I'm on 3 copies of this. It just seems like a very solid card overall. Plus, Crab can boost the Shadow Finder, making it a 5/3 evasive, which is huge too, right? So there's some extra synergy. Like, Crab is in a really good spot, in my opinion. I just think Crab is very, very good right now. We'll see if and again, you'll see in some simulations why it's so good. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below if you're up on Crab or not. I'm opting for 3 copies of the Genie. Again, I do think this card is overrated, but again, in testing, it is very strong. Just being able to, like, after you've stabilized the board state, which Ruby Amethyst is very good at doing, assuming you don't have your whole hand discarded by Emerald, this card just wins you the game on the spot, more or less. Like, as soon as you B-prep, wipe a board, usually in any matchup, even against Emerald decks, if you follow up with the Genie, it's like very, very hard for other decks to recover and deal with the Genie. Like Ruby Sapphire can deal with it because they have so much removal, but you already have a good matchup into Ruby Sapphire anyways. Like, this card just does really good work in this deck in Ruby Amethyst. So yeah, I definitely think it has a place. 4 goats still, you know, literally the best closer in the game, so continue to play 4 of that. And I'm still on 2 rabbits. I liked this ratio of 3 Genie, 2 rabbit. I think rabbit is still good. It has decent follow-through play, like, you know, B-prepping your board with a rabbit, you know, you don't really feel that bad, versus having to B-prep with a Genie feels worse. So again, in certain scenarios, depending on how the matchup is going and the scenario you're in, if you have Genie and rabbit, you need to know which one I want to play. I think, again, it's not obviously guaranteed because it depends on how the game is playing out, but usually if you can follow up Genie after a B prep, and like I said, after you stabilize, it's very, very strong, versus if you're in a grind game, the rabbit is obviously going to be way stronger. So having both options is decent, but you know, you'll see Genie more than rabbit because you're playing more copies of Genie. And by the way, yeah, this is a 60 card version. The Elsa the Fifth Spirit, I've already talked about this. You know, more than just a Maui combo piece, this card is just good in and of itself, I think. Being able to tap down and then use your like Mim cards, Merlin cards, etc. in order to take out what you tap down is very, very strong. This card can help you like not lose the game, right? If your opponent just drops a ready threat and they're just like, I'm going to quest for game next turn, this card can help you manage the board state. So we're playing 4 of this. Plus, it's a nice extender or combo piece with the Maui half shark. Continuing to play 4 Maui Hero to All. Again, just one of the best board clears in the game, right, for single character removal. And then I'm opting for 4 Maui Sharks, which might be overkill. You could probably get away with 3, but I just wanted to test it out a little bit more. So we are playing 4. Yeah, this card, you know, it's got a lot going for it. Evasive, huge body, 7/5. Still gets outed by Zeus, but I think people are on reduced copies of Zeus nowadays. Because Grab Your Swords is actually coming back, and I'll explain why I'm in the Sapphire Steel meta deck profile. 6 cost, it's inkable, like there's a lot going for it. You don't really want to quest with this, but a really overlooked, I want to say overlooked, but something that I personally forget about is that whenever you play an action, you gain a lore. Obviously the big thing is, you know, you challenge with it, you get back a card, and that's huge, right? Anything to generate card advantage is massive in card games, right, guys? So even if you get back an action to ink, that's fine. It's just free resource. It's just card advantage. If you get an action back that can actually make a difference, like a B prep or a thievery or something like that, huge, huge, huge. So yeah, I do think this card is pretty good, but I think you have to be very careful and not fall into the trap of like just try harding to make this work. This card should be like in its natural state. Like you should just be like, hey, I'm in a scenario where I can drop the Maui Shark and make it work in this game state. Not that, oh, I have to try to set up for the Maui Shark, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So like if I already have a Shadow Finder on the board, my opponent has an exerted threat, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to be playing for the Maui Shark. Versus if it's like, oh, you know, I have the Cogsworth and I have the Maui Shark, and like I want to kind of set up this combo, but I got to wait a few turns because I got to get the extra ink, and then my opponent has to have the exerted card. So like I might need to make sure that they have an exerted card, or if they don't, they have to wait extra turns to make sure they exert. Like it's just not going to work out for you, right? Because your opponent's just going to run you over while you try to set up. So, and for that regard, you know, make sure you know how to play this. It will require some testing in order to make sure you're playing it correctly. And one of the nice things about playing, and I do think this card is just going to get better over time, because we should get good Elsa cards in the future. Like the what I forget what the sub name is on this one. The Fifth Spirit, of course. Okay, because we play 4 Fifth Spirit, this card is an excellent shift target. And so one of the nice, like, this card is just solid overall. First of all, it is uninkable, which is unfortunate. Well, it's the reason why we're only playing 1. But being able to either just hard cast this on 8 or shift it for 6 onto an existing Fifth Spirit, especially if you do have the Maui Shark on board and it doesn't, like, it survives a turn, you tap down 2 threats that are tapped for the opponent's turn as well. That gives your Maui Shark 2 targets, right? Which is very strong to recur, like Friends or Thieveries or whatever you want to recur, in order to just close out the game even faster, right? Like this card can help facilitate like a game-ending state for you, which is very, very strong. And again, I think I showcase one of my simulations where I locked down the board with the Elsa. Or no, I think I deleted that match because it was against Ruby Sapphire in the simulation, and the CPU just doesn't play the Ruby Sapphire deck properly. So they're making too many mistakes, and it's just, I mean, you win that match anyways, but it's just like, what's the point of showing it? So I have a match against Sapphire Steel because the CPU actually plays that deck somewhat okay. And then for the action, so this and song. So this is where you really need, I don't want to say like you need that critical mass, but it does sometimes feel like you do, because a lot of the times, you know, you actually want to have a valid reason and target for the Maui Shark. So this again goes back to what I was saying, and don't try to play into the trap of, oh, I'm playing for the Maui Shark. It's like, no, you're playing Ruby Amethyst game. Maui Shark is just there to help you facilitate some of the more powerful lines where you can generate, you know, a lore swing with Thievery, card advantage swings with bringing back Friends, board state stabilization with Brawl, and bringing back a Be Prepared, even though that would wipe your own board. But one of the interesting tech options that I was using is Lose the Way. It's a 2-cost inkable card, and I've always been a fan of these kind of cards. I was a fan of, I forget what the name is, Last Ditch Effort, I think, and Pinocchio's in the past. Things that would exert your opponent's characters, which is why I like the Fifth Spirit a lot too. Because it's just unexpected and it really disrupts your opponent's game plan. Again, my Yu-Gi-Oh players know all about that disruption, right? That's what Yu-Gi-Oh is. How many disruptions do I have for my opponents and that kind of thing? But, you know, your opponent is setting up a game plan, and there's nothing in this game right now that's like counterspell, like interaction during your opponent's turn. This is the closest thing you're going to get to it right now. And so let's say your opponent is setting up for like a nice little combo extender piece or something, where they have like a Tamatoa on board and they're like, great, I'm going to next turn quest with Tamatoa, bring back Dime, play Dime, go for game. Like I win the game. You drop this, you exert the Tamatoa, you maybe discard a card to keep it exerted so it doesn't ready during the opponent's turn, and that throws off their game plan. Or, you know, you exert it and you're able to like Maui Shark, take it out, right? Or, you know, throw something into it and then Maui Shark finish it off. Yes, you lose your Maui Shark, but you take out a huge threat and the Shark will recur something for you. It could recur this, it could recur anything else in your discard. This is a really good tech option, just a one of. I don't think you want to play more than one. If you see it, great. If you don't see it, it's fine, because again, you have Elsa's in order to tap things down. The one Thievery, this card, if you do play it with the Maui Shark, is a 2 lore gain, right? Because you gain 1 off of this and then 1 off the Maui Shark, and then you make your opponent lose 1. Think about like how we played Ruby Amethyst in the first chapter, where Ursula Power Hungry was a big card, right? Make your opponent lose 1 lore, you draw a card, and it was a 3 questing 2/8 body, which was massive at the time. This card is a lore swing, 2 lore, and you make your opponent lose 1. Whereas Ursula would need to wait a turn before it would quest for 3 lore. This card for 1 ink instead of the, what was it, 8 ink for Ursula, or 7? It was 7, right? I think it was 7 for a 2/8 body, because it sings B Prep. Regardless, though, Yeah, this card gets you 2 lore instantly, makes your opponent lose 1 lore with the Maui Shark on board. Even if you just play this, like, it's just a one of, it's not really a good card, honestly, because it's negative advantage. But in the concept of I can recur this card and generate that tempo, not tempo, but like that lore swing, right? Like making your opponent lose a lore is very critical sometimes. I mean, we've seen the game accelerate to a point where someone's going to quest for game, they're questing up to like 25, but some instances it's like they just have enough for game, and this card can really help you restabilize the balance, especially if you recur it multiple times and make them lose like 2 or 3 lore, because you're going to be gaining, hopefully, like, if they lose 2, you should gain 4. If they lose 3, you should gain 6, kind of thing, which is huge, right? Ruby Amethyst, a deck that's definitely been like a slow burn kind of deck. Like, I just slowly chip away with my efficient one questing characters. I mean, Genie helps to accelerate that, and so will Thievery, right? And putting in this Elsa back into the deck, questing for 3 is huge as well. 4 brawls, of course, 4 friends. The nice thing about Maui Shark 2, and one of the nice contingency air quote plans that you have, is that you no longer really fear Ursula Deceiver of All. Like, the Ursula Deceiver of All, rip your Be Prepared, you're like, that's fine. Like, that's actually good. Like, I don't even care, because that card's just sitting in my hand dead anyways. So, like, I'll recur it with the Shark if I need to. But Ursula Deceiver of All, or sorry, Deceiver, not Deceiver of All. Deceiver, the one that rips songs, doesn't hurt you as much. So you only play a total of 13 things to recur with the Maui Shark. And I do think that's a little low. But that being said, all you really need to see is like 1 Friends, 1 Brawl, and then this thing is online. Getting back a Brawl, getting back a Friends, even if it's just for ink, is huge, right? Because Friends is card advantage, Brawl is board stabilization, right? Taking out a threat, taking out a hero, taking, like, whatever. Both are good. And then if you do see some of the one-ofs, well, I don't know where we went there. If you do see some of the one-ofs, it's actually not bad, right? Obviously, because being able to recur these is very strong. I mean, Lose the Way, using it with like Maui Hero to All, using it with Go, using it with something that you boost up with Crab, still very disruptive and very, very powerful, right? And then the extra kicker of like discarding a card to get the extra effect. It's like if you're in a really tough spot, yeah, I really like this card, and I think it definitely is at least a one of in Ruby Amethyst if you're doing the Shark version. So that's the deck list. It's very easy to play too. Only 11 Uninkables and 49 Inkable cards. 44 Amethyst and only 16 Ruby though. So really cutting back on the Ruby. But like I said, I probably cut Cogsworth. So going out to like 40 Amethyst and 20 Ruby and put in the 3-2 Moana. But we'll see. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into a simulation.